The fourth round of the Racing Club International Multi-Sprint Championship is ready and set and green. Welcome everyone to the Autodromo Enzo Dino Ferrari, better known as Imola, as we head out for qualifying. But I'm not alone in the box for the first time in quite a while. John Dalton is here with me. Last time I saw John Dalton, actually, he was running around racing on the Virtual Assetto Corsa Competizione British circuits and the Mini British GT Championship, of course, on his own. John, welcome in.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, it's great to be here tonight. It's been a while since I've A, raced, and B, since I've commentated here. And, you know, what better circuit to come back to than Imola, of course, steeped in history, one of the most technical and unforgiving tracks, I would say, probably on the calendar, where, of course, precision is absolutely critical. And bringing in the multi-class element this evening, of course, traffic management is going to be key throughout all of the race, with overtaking opportunities being limited, with narrow sections and chicanes such as Tamburello and, of course, the Variante Alta. Managing traffic between the classes could be the defining factor in tonight's race. But for the moment, it's, of course, the LMGT3s taking center stage for the split qualifying session. The first 10 minutes, we allow the LMGT3s to get their elbows out, should we say, and fight for that key track position and set the fastest lap. And then the latter 10 minutes, of course, are reserved for the hypercar. And this man here from a team very close to my heart, nearly on pace, Fabian Schmidberger, begins his outlap. And we'll have to see the benchmark time as he comes towards the first chicane. Of course, we hit the Variante Tamburello, a very fast entry, down 3 or 4 gears in the LMGT3s. Flick it left, flick it right, being careful, of course, on the curbs and trying to straighten out the wheel as quickly as possible for the run to the next chicane. Of course, the Variante Villeneuve, again, a very quick left-right section. It's almost a kind of, you know, one line fits all through here. Hypercars are going to have to be patient and make their move up into Tosa, turn 7, the slowest corner on the circuit. It feels like it drags on forever. And of course, a crucial exit here because the next section is uphill through turn 8, the slight kink, before we hit Piratella of turn 9. A very fast left-hander, awfully common for picking up track limits, especially in ACC, but of course the LMU version, gravel trap on the right-hand side before we come down the hill towards Acqua Minerale. A very tricky corner as you brake, turn in, come off the brakes, back on the brakes before opening up the throttle for the run once again up another hill towards the Variante Alta, the tightest corner, I would say, of the circuit. Big curbs on the inside of each of them, and again, being careful of track limits on the outside. But again, LMU with that gravel trap deters drivers from stretching those track limits, but I'm sure we're going to see them pushing every single inch tonight as they fight for position. Down the hill towards Ravazza, 16 on the brakes, pitching in for 17 before 18, the second part, of course, of Ravazza. Jumping on the power, again, a crucial exit. It's a very long drag towards the start-finish line, and an even longer drag towards the first chicane, and that's when you're going to be a sitting duck. And Fabian Schmidberger, already with a purple middle sector, that's the benchmark time of a 1:45.381, and plenty more cars behind Adam to come through.
That was beautifully commentated lap. So, of course, it seems like you've got a lot of experience around this track. There seems to be a Porsche there to the right-hand side, just trying to get out of the way of the Lexus. But, of course, a very, very historic circuit. You kind of spoke a little bit about, you know, how much this kind of circuit has gone through. You know, plenty of changes. You know, this circuit is going through so many changes over the course of history. You know, Tamburello used to be a completely flat left-hander, so was Villeneuve. You know, that chicane wasn't there. It was all the final part of the circuit that was so twisted and tight. You know, plenty of chicanes. There was probably about, you know, 3 of them at one stage, and even then down towards Acqua Minerale, turn 11 was once a chicane back in the mid 1990s. Here is Jablonski in his all blue Porsche, heading towards that Variante Villeneuve chicane, trying to really cut quite tightly there, taking a little bit of gravel with him. Of course, 5 minutes left to go in this session, so these LMGT3 drivers do not get a lot of time under their belt. And, you know, most notably about this circuit, it has now become the 2026 FIA World Endurance Championship season opener after the cancellation of Lusail earlier in the year. So, that, of course, Imola hosting the 6 hours. Tonight's race will be 1 hour and 20 minutes. But we now see Christopher Strapen in the number 78 Akodis ASP Lexus. Fabian Schmidberger taking back the fastest lap, but that's due to probably track evolution already and fuel burning down. And now Martin Loreng taking the fastest lap, 143.319. He's the only driver now in the 143. So spectacular lap time there from the Czech master. But can Christopher Strapen potentially go into the 143s? He'll head over the line. Is it going to be a 43? No, it's going to be a 140. 43.2. Wow, that kind of caught me off guard just that little bit, and goes 0.08 of a second clear of his manufacturer teammate Martin Loreng.
Yeah, so Martin Lawrence and, of course, Christopher Straper, ex-teammates from the RCI esports camp when we used to run the Bentley there. So they know each other inside out. They've raced together plenty of times. And I think the last time I casted an LMU race here at RCI, it was these two duking it out at the front of the field. So expect to see a very good battle put up from the Czech and, of course, the Belgian driver. And I believe this is actually Verstappen's first round in the championship tonight, yet to score on the table. So could be a bit of a dark horse, snatching away some easy points away from Lawrence that he thought he maybe had in the bag tonight as he jumps over the chicane curbs towards the end of the lap, of course, through the Variante Alto. A little bit of traffic ahead, but I don't think it's going to affect him. He's green in the first sector, so personal best there. Purple in the middle sector, so fastest overall as it stands. And can he stitch this lap together to get towards the line? Of course, Lawrence not too far off the back of Verstappen, and Joe Dorber, of course, nipping at the heels as well, as Fabian Schmidberger throws in another lap to take himself towards the second row of the grid as Lawrence comes to the line. Is it going to be enough? And it is by just over half a second. Martin Lawrence now your fastest driver in LMGT3, and just over 12.5 minutes on the clock, Adam. There's still enough time for about 2 laps from the Czech Republic driver.
Indeed there is. So keep an eye on that ticker there in the top left of your screen, because that is going to be the decisive moment. Once we hit the 10-minute mark, it will go green. All of the LMGT3s will be sent back to the pit lane on their own feet. And the hypercars will now head out, but it's now starting to get into a point here where qualifying is just starting to tighten up. Martin Lorek and Christopher Strapen at this moment in time just having their big advantage, over a second to the rest of the field. But Fabian Schmidberger might have another say in the matter. Emo Platt, who has put his Ferrari up into P4, so put it on the second row of the grid. Seemingly just being about a couple tenths behind Fabian Schmidberger. Oh, that was Wojciech Rebecki there in towards the Aqua Minerale sequence. But it looks like for now Martin Loreng has gone a little bit faster according to the sector time. Rebecki in that BMW skips over the chicane, not as violent as I've noticed compared to potentially other games. I know how bad it can be in Esteso Corte Competizione and potentially even iRacing, but it seems a little bit more softer. I don't know if we're dealing with big heavy LMGT3 cars. But Martin Lorek again has gone purple in that middle sector. He is at 0.08 of a second up last time around, but he did not improve that time around. Lost it all in the last sector. Could that potentially be down at Ravazza potentially, because it's a downhill, really difficult sequence. And there is the hypercars heading out.
Yeah, hypercars absolutely itching to get the front space on the pit lane there. The number 36 looks to be at the head of the queue, although the Toyota queuing up alongside, and it's getting a little bit elbows out towards pit exit between these two, and the BMW in the background, of course, just waiting there. And I believe possibly teammates Dion Schmitz there at the front alongside Callum Kerrigan, waiting patiently in the Ferrari as Joe Dorber back to the pit lane. No improvement for him. P3 for the German driver. Verstappen also into the pits, so P2 for the Belgian driver. Fabian Schmidberger also calls it a day. Emo Plata back to the lane as well. And Martin is on a current lap, although it doesn't look like any sectors are illuminated on the timing. So potentially an invalid lap here for Martin Lawrence, just getting the last kind of sighting in. as the hypercars begin their outlaps now. And it's all going to be very crucial here, Adam. Of course, track space, we touched on it earlier. It's going to be a formidable thing where everybody's going to want that kind of little pocket away from everybody. They don't want that dirty air, but equally a slipstream could be quite powerful here, of course, with the long drag between Ravazza and Tamburello. That could start off a nice lap with a slingshot across the line, as Matthew Malcolm, our last LMGT3 car, I think, on a timed lap at the moment. A big moment out of Ravazza. That's going to lose him time, although looks like a healthy gain across Sector 1 and Sector 2, so this could propel him a little bit closer towards the back of Rybecki, and I think he calls it there over the MotoGP chicane in frustration and into the wall there. Back to the pits for Matthew Malcolm. No further improvement there for the Scots driver, as Dion Schmitz looks like possibly at the head of the queue here for the hypercar train, of course, in the Toyota. We're going to have a very big speed difference to what we just witnessed not too long ago with these LMGT3s. These hypercars, once they get up and, you know, build the tire temperature and the pressure into the slicks, it's going to be one of those things that's going to be absolutely magical to witness. And Dion Schmitz, the first driver here through Ravazza, still looks like he's got no front end left in that car, so tire temperature still building. So expect to see the fastest laps coming out of these guys in the next kind of 4 minutes, I would say. Once they get this outlap, this banker lap in, as we ride on board now, you can see him weaving on the straight, trying to build that temperature into the tire already. Of course, 7 gears in the hypercar, speeds of nearly 300 kph before standing on the brakes. There's a car beginning his outlap ahead. Hopefully doesn't impede Dion there as he goes left to right, of course, tries to jump on the power. You can see him feathering the throttle there on the right-hand side. I think this lap could be slightly abandoned. He's just going to try and keep some life in this tire rather than beat the living daylight out of it too early on and then risk the next lap, Adam. I think Dion knows the fastest lap is going to come in the next 2 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. There's still, you know, plenty of time for these hypercars, of course, much faster than our LMGT3's yellow in Sector 2, according to our timing screen. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes about. So that will be, you know, not the most ideal situation, as we now see Dion Schmitz now coming in towards Sector 2, but it goes very, very deep there into Aqua Minerale, maybe even locked a front right in there, loading it way too much. We head our way in towards that chicane section of the Variante Alta. Great exit from Schmitz, but it just doesn't seem to be linking up, you know, that incredibly. We head our way down on towards Ravazza, really trying to lift off a little bit on towards the next into the next couple of sequence of corners. I think Schmitz is now going to set the benchmark time in the early stage of the virtual energy does die down. They are light on fuel to get the best out of their lap times, but it was a 1:33.104 to get things kicked off. But I definitely expect maybe the 1:31s to come in pretty soon. So we'll have to see what everyone else decides to do in that Toyota. There is our Peugeot of Kevin Boss. The number 31 heads his way on towards that final sequence of corners. Kevin a little bit lower, more down in the standings, in the championship standings, which we're going to be looking at after qualifying. But he'll head over the line, and what can he do? 1:37.0. That puts him in 7th place. So again, I think he's also made a little bit of an error, but it's the 2 Toyotas at the head of the field for now, but of course expect that all to change.
Yeah, absolutely. As the track evolves, of course, drivers become a little bit more comfortable running on these lighter fuel loads. Again, comes into practice that some drivers may be, you know, practicing more for the longer race stint, an hour 20 on the cards tonight. So we're expecting to see at least one pit stop out of the guys. And a keynote we've not mentioned yet in the broadcast, there is limited tire sets in this championship. We give drivers 8 tires. That's 8 individual tires. So essentially 2 full sets of tires here. And it's up to those guys to determine how they're going to use them, whether they want to beat the living daylights out of them in qualifying to try and get the higher grid position, or whether they want to be a bit more conservative and save some for the race, as Rafael Huel over the line into P3 with a 1:35.445. Again, a RCI regular that we're used to seeing towards the front of the grid, as Dion Schmitz throws in a lap, 1:31.5. 3.2 seconds quicker than the next Toyota of Billy Octane. And here he comes across the line in great timing, as always, for a 132.6. Not really close to Dion Schmitz's time, but Billy Octane, again, another quick driver in his own right. Dreicher, 1.444 seconds off the back. He's third. He's fastest in the third sector, I believe we're being told, as Dion Schmitz lighting up the timing boards. Adam, purple already again in sector 1, and he's still got 4.5 minutes on the clock. I don't think this man is backing down for the next 4 minutes or so.
No, absolutely not. The Toyota driver really on a flyer here. He's really going to be pushing on, but he's gone round. Just drops the car. Too much throttle input there, and he's going to cause a yellow in the middle sector. That's going to ask the driver to slow down. That's right on board here with Dion Schmitz. Just lost it over the curb there. It had a big old tank slapper as the rear of the car wagged like a happy dog when it gets fed a bone. And there you can see Schmitz now going to try and back off, cool the tyres for another lap. We'll be able to go again here. What about Zeno van Drescher, who currently runs 4th in the standings in his BMW? He will now exit the final corner. The man who sits 49 points at this moment in time will now head across the timing beam. Where will he put that BMW car? He puts it to the top of the field, and the Belgian Zeno van Drescher will now look to extend that lead potentially. But let's not forget Dion Schmitz either. Callum Kerrigan going up to 3rd. He is the highest ranked Ferrari with a 132.092. So I did kind of predict already that the 131s will be possible. But at this moment in time, they're just trying to work out how the ending is going to work here. Again, Van der Vecken going 2nd in the Aston.
Yeah, very quick drivers here, especially in the hypercar category, as we've got a BMW, an Aston, and a Toyota all on the top 3 steps, and then a Ferrari, Peugeot, Porsche. So manufacturers very widespread here. Not one seems all too confident over the other, and still 2.5 minutes on the clock. I think anything can happen here. Everybody looking super competitive as Vecken there takes the first sector personal best that he's done so far. So looking for an improvement on this lap. 131.315 from Dreicher is to beat, and Vecken very wide at the top of the hill there. That's not going to do any good for his lap at Piratella as he comes down, of course, to Aqua Minerale. He's going to be sorting himself out, I think, mentally resetting himself to go once more, and plenty of time on the clock for him as Billy Octane comes across towards the line. Purple middle sector, personal first as Dreicher goes quickest with a 130.892. Octane responds with a 131.376. It's not going to be good enough to upset the BMW on that top step of the podium at the moment. I think Dion Schmitz could be the man to do it as he yields, though, on the exit of the Tamburello chicane. So Schmitz back to the pits. That's going to be his day done and dusted. I don't think he's going to have enough time for an outlap and a fast lap. So the Toyota driver remains in P4 as Dreicher is still out circulating, building some information, probably trying to push a little bit more as Whittle stops on circuit. He's going to be back to the pit lane. Partes has given up. Navarro also hasn't set a time in the Alpine in P14. So still some drivers, you know, starting on the back foot from the get-go. Big wiggle from Dreicher as he comes out of Aqua Minerale up to the Variante Alta. There's going to be a car ahead, but I don't think it's going to be all too affecting, and locks the rear brakes big time into Alta. That's back to the pit lane. I don't know if he's maybe building a gap, actually. He's still got time, Adam, on the clock, 50 seconds. Billy Octane is coming across to the back of Dreicher. That's going to be a little bit of traffic, so Octane needs to kind of back off and build a gap, but not so much that he misses the checkered flag. 30 seconds or so from Rivazza down to the line. Should be plenty of time for the Speed Juice and Horseflow car as he exits out towards the line. It's not going to be a fast lap this time for Octane, but he's going to try and set himself up, and that was Dreicher on the left-hand side of your picture, back to the pit lane, practicing, Adam, very key fact here, a pit entry, which we've not seen too many drivers do. And we know races can be won or lost as Billy Octane begins his last stab at it. Vecken looking good though. Sector 1 and 2 personal best. It's going to be a small gain. Might be enough to jump Octane, but of course Octane has that extra lap under his belt. Vecken's going to be cutting it fine to get another one. I don't think he's got another one in him, but he does go P2. But Billy Octane, remember, Adam, still circulating, could be the man to disrupt this front row.
He's done an absolutely brilliant job, and that's going to be Billy Octane moving backwards. That's not ideal whatsoever from our Toyota. He teleports back to the pit lane, and that should be the end of the session. This is Billy Octane. I think, where did the rear go? Literally just mid-corner, really. So there was, I think, too much throttle in the early stages. These are big, heavy hypercars. But here is Callum Kerrigan as the tick counter hits 0. We've still got Kerrigan out there, Boss out there, Jakob Tucky has gone into the pit lane, so 2 left to go. Kerrigan's gone green in the middle sector, so that's a personal best for him, so you could potentially fly that maybe past Whittle, which is going to be his aim to become the highest placed Ferrari out of everyone here, but it now looks like in towards this final sequence of corners for Callum Kerrigan in the pink and black camo Ferrari. He's going to be entering the pit lane, and that will spell zilch for Kerrigan. What about Kevin Boss? I reckon he's going to be coming in as well because he got absolutely nothing to go with, and in fact he's stayed out, so he's got another lap to complete. I don't expect anything's gone too well on that last sector, and in fact it had. He's gone 6th. That was a pretty brave one there for Kevin Boss. He's put himself onto the 3rd row of the grid here ahead of the race at Imola. So that will be it for the entire qualifying session. And what a qualifying session we had here at Imola. There's some beautiful scenes there of when Imola has his sunset moments, which I'm sure will be adored by absolutely everyone. But overall, a solid session there, John.
Yeah, very solid session indeed. Super competitive times towards the top end of the grid. Of course, Dreischer, your pole sitter in hypercar. Van der Vecken, very close to him. And then we've got the Toyotas on the 2nd row, although they're both struggling, it looks like, with mid-corner to corner exit. Richard Whittle, the best of your Ferraris. Kevin Boss, the sole Peugeot on the grid. Callum Kerrigan, P7. A joint Porsche for Huell and Mares. And George Barr wraps out your top 10 in the Aston Martin. And fastest lap, of course, to Dreischer there. Jack Mays, Tucky, Partes, and Navarro round out your final grid. Of course, Partes very brave, I would say, with a Lamborghini and the sole Alpine at the back of the grid as well. And LMGT3 was no different. Martin Lawrence and Christopher Streppen taking lumps out of each other in a Lexus lockout. Joe Dorber just behind. Fabian Schmidberger shares the 2nd row of the grid. Emo Plata alongside Wojtek Rybecki. Matthew Malcolm, Jablonski, Hearn, and Savage wrap out your top 10. Again, a good spread of manufacturers, although Lexus lockout, Porsche's towards the back end of the top 10. And then we've got Paul Schmidt in the Mustang, Visser and Harmon wrap out, of course, the LMGT3. So a very congested grid, I would say. And of course, the main thing that we're all talking about here is the championship standings, which I believe our broadcaster Ted Edwards does have queued up in the wings. And a lovely graphic from our social media team. Big shout out to those guys. Martin Vaselli leaps and bounds ahead on 83 points. Thomas Kobora, who can't be here tonight, he is in the YouTube chat though, so welcome in indeed on 53. Van der Vecken going to jump you tonight though, 51 points just behind. Van Dreischer looks to capitalize as well. Dion Schmitz, bit of a dark horse, keep your eye on him. Marco Badowski, Callum Kerrigan, Kevin Boss, Richard Whittle, and Billy Octane round out the top 10 in hypercar. And LMGT3, it's, of course, Martin Lawrence, Adam. You said earlier, an absolute dominant season so far from him on 90 points. Zach Vermaak sitting out. I believe he's just bought a new wheelbase, if I'm correct in saying. So Fabian Schmidberger going to be jumping him. Wojtek Rybecki, a strong start to the season. Joe Dorber looking competitive here tonight, and Barondo on 26. Our very own Ryan Gill on 18. Michael Savage just behind, tied with Matt Townsend and Emo Plata, looking very competitive towards the back end of the LMGT3 field. And it just goes to prove, Adam, every point counts at the moment in this championship.
And it does, because there's some pretty high stake points up for grabs every single round. So you've got to be at the best of your positioning. So it will be really, really important to have a nice, clean race around Imola. We did speak earlier about the potential traffic that could ensue. This track is known for being so narrow, and it can get so frustrating to try and get overtakes. And I expect maybe from our sim racers in here that there will be mistakes. Expect mistakes as our drivers look to try and now. I say try, they will look to lock in before going ahead to the green. And we now look a minute till the green, but you know, you've been in this position plenty of times here. What would you be looking for here, John? If you're a driver sat in one of these cars, you know, what would you be thinking about?
Yeah, it's a very long evening ahead, let's say, for these drivers, of course, in the real world. Many people have been at work, long day. Some might be nice and refreshed, only just woken up in their time zone. Of course, sim racing is that global phenomenon that we're all so obsessed with at the moment. If you're on the grid, hypercars, you know, you've just got to focus. You've got to get a clean start. You've got to kind of break away in your own packs if you can. Avoid squabbling with each other because it just hemorrhages and bleeds time. And play the long game this afternoon. Of course, we've got the traffic factor, like you mentioned, Adam. And again, the same for the LMGT3 guys. Get your head down, try and find some space, and keep watching those mirrors. It's going to be so tricky if you're an LMGT3 driver. A lot of us are used to, you know, racing longer races in endurance. We've got teams in Discord, TeamSpeak, you know, whatever we're using to notify each other, almost like a second spotter of traffic coming up any moments ahead. But a lot of these weeknight league races, most people kind of compete solo. They don't always have that kind of spotter aspect with them, and it can be a lot trickier to be aware of, you know, what's going on. And like we keep saying, it's going to be traffic tonight. It's going to be the hypercars being patient, trying to find the gaps where they can, not hemorrhage too much time, but equally the LMGT3s have to be alert in their mirrors and not hold up at the same time as trying to not dive out of the way and detriment themselves. But hypercars rolling towards the flag. Adam, of course, LMGT3s in the back. This one's over to you.
Indeed, as we now look to trundle our way towards the timing B. And it does seem that it is partly cloudy here at Imola, looking about 27 degrees, as grip will be evolving over time. And we now look to hit the lights here at Imola and power their way down on towards turn number 1 of Tamburello. We go racing here at Imola for the first time, and it's a decent start there for what seems to be Spitzer, who's trying to find a way potentially up the inside line, but now in towards the first corner. Zeno van Driesche with the inside line. He's going to lock up there and send off what's going to be Milan van der Vecken. There's going to be a little bit of chaos coming off the corner. I think that's one of the Ferraris of Rafael Hull potentially having a bit of a moment there, looking to try and regain apology, that was Callum Kerrigan in that one. So Van der Vecken's got all sorts to do, but Smits now leads the race after his mistake in the latter stages of this qualifying session. The LMGT3s are also underway. Lowering from Verstappen, the Lexus will look to try and launch themselves in a massive lead here before they then work their way and make their own kind of strategy. But already, but you can see here, John, Van der Vecken on the attack early doors.
Yeah, Van der Vecken's itching to try and make up some places in that Aston Martin. Buried in the back of, I think that's Callum Kerrigan just ahead in the pink camo Ferrari. Up the inside, very clean move towards the Variante Alto. I think Kerrigan, very wise head on his shoulders. He knows when a fight's going to be lost in the long run, and certainly thinks of the bigger picture, doing many endurance races throughout the ACC lifespan here at RCI. So very clued up driver, very smart move, I would say, there from Kerrigan, just to allow him through, and that allows Raphael Huell now towards the back, and Van der Vecken's making up another place on Richard Whittle, the second Ferrari dispatched of P5. He's going back to the front. Dion Schmitz, of course, with the fastest lap, being the first driver to cross the line. It's Schmitz from Dreischer from Octane. Kevin Boss sneaking up into P4 during all of the chaos on the opening lap, and we've got a few fans in the chat from Simit and Dion from the Simit Studios over on Twitch. Welcome on in. And of course, the YouTube chat has been mentioning a few drivers as well. So plenty of fans at home, and welcome in to RCI TV and LMU. And Raphael Huell chomping at the bit on the back of Callum Kerrigan. It's Martin Lawrence out from Christopher Strapen, though, in the LMGT3 fight. Fabian Schmidberger backing off ever so slightly, 1.6 seconds off the back of the second Lexus, and Joe Dorber within reach of him as well in the Mercedes. Rybecki, a little bit of a calm start, a second off the back, and Emo Plata about half a second off the back of him as well. So plenty of action up and down the field as we come back briefly to the LMGT3s. It's looking like everybody's kind of spaced out a little bit, has got their own kind of pocket of air, I would say, to run in. Possibly Amo Plata looking to capitalize towards Rybecki a little bit in that BMW in the early stages of this race. And of course, P1 today gets 30 points. So it's going to be a very healthy score if you can continue this progress through. Of course, Martin Lawrence is going to propel him even further forward in the championship if all goes well. And Dion Schmitz, he's going to creep up through the table. But Dreischer with the fastest lap now, 133.338. That BMW is going to be rather quickly, I would say, onto the back of Dion Schmitz, Adam.
Richard Whittle went onto the gravel about a lap ago, and that's why he got overtaken by Milan van der Becken. But this is the battle for the race to lead. So early doors is Zeno van Dries is going to look to potentially just work his way onto the back of Dion Schmitz there. Martin Lawrence going taking the fastest lap, so managing to extend that lead there in the LMGT3 class. But for the moment, if you're Zeno van Dries, you're pretty much in the perfect position. You know, if you're sitting in second, you know, you get to analyze what Dion Schmitz is doing. He's had a bit of a why moment there, but of course that's all going to be part of his learning process. He now knows, you know, not to get on that curb, not to put the car here, not to put the car there, and all that self-data he is going to be gathering for himself and using in the latter stages. It's just about trying to keep yourself really level-headed in moments like this, because you could very easily just go super aggressive, burn all your virtual energy, burn through the entire tyre, and find yourself in a really tricky situation come the final 10 minutes where you've dropped multiple places and multiple kind of, multiple seconds to the rest of the pack here. Kevin Boss under a little bit of pressure here, and Milan van der Becken now streams past him in the screaming Aston Martin. In the Aston Martin, he heads his way now in towards 2, 3, and the three corners of Tamburello, and there you can see Kevin Boss will now look to try and get past Milan van der Becken, but it doesn't seem to be that successful. I think van der Becken will have the pace to just try and walk off from P5 there.
Yeah, it's going to be an easy lead to build, I would say, for van der Becken. You know, very sensibly, Kevin Boss didn't put up much of a fight, I would say. He just wants to kind of focus on his own race. He knows Callum Kerrigan's behind again. Two very similar drivers in pace, I would say, in the world of ACC, and probably carries over to the world of LMU as well, as Christopher Strapen there briefly fastest lap at the top of the screen popped up. So chomping away at the back of Martin Lawrence, not by much, but it's going to take small margins to get there this evening. Of course, 1 minute 20 on the race clock as we started with 6 minutes in, and already we've seen big position shuffles through the grid. Dion Schmitz out front to a second of the good over Dreischer. And Billy Octane even further back, nearly 2 seconds off the back. Van der Becken begins his climb towards the top, still the next step of the podium, should we say, the first step of P3, as the gaps towards the back of the field are a little bit closer than what we see towards the front. We've got a bit of a train here headed by Raphael Huell in P7, so we're looking kind of P7 back to P11 right now on the screen. That includes George Barr in the Aston Martin Valkyrie, Richard Whittle in the Ferrari, our very own Jack Mays in the Peugeot, and of course the man we're watching here, Mares. Oh, we've had an off though at the first chicane. That's the Tamburello chicane on the exit. It's Huell flashing up as yellow as Ted scrambles for a replay. Let's have a look over the second half of the curb. Jumped on the power, and the rear end hadn't quite settled yet. Backwards through the gravel And I think he's made contact with the wall. Hopefully it's drivable, but you can see there, big armful of opposite lock as he tries to save it, but too little too late in this hypercar era, Adam. These cars are super snappy, of course, with all their hybrid systems, their four-wheel drives. Once it goes, it tends to go pretty quickly. And Raphael Huell on the front foot of that one, as Callum Kerrigan actually has dropped back as well. This is Huell and Kerrigan. Kerrigan was all the way up in towards the mid pack, so something's happened here. This is through the Villeneuve towards Tozer, and already he's obviously Kevin Boss is ahead, jumps on the brakes and jumps on the power, and the rear end stepping out once again. Another hypercar spin and safely off to drivers to the inside, actually to drivers left, way out of the way. Manages to get it back underway off the grass. You see there the rear wheels spinning violently, the front wheels doing nothing in the Ferrari, and Raphael Huell then catches back up to the back. So just as we think we're kind of all settled and underway, Adam, it all flips on its head once again.
It's so difficult to drive these hypercars, I think just because the incredible amount of power and, you know, the weight to the car as well. Fabian Schmidberger's had an error. That's not good there in the Optimum McLaren. We'll have to see what happened here with the I believe, the Austrian driver heading in towards Piratella and goes, oh, he's gone too wide and onto the gravel. He's looped it as well. So lucky not to be hit by anyone. He grazes that tyre barrier. He tries to get away in his mid-engine V6 McLaren. That is super unfortunate there. He dropped down to P7 amongst the pack of Porsches of Matt Malcolm, Hearn and Jablonski. So not an ideal start there for Fabian Schmidberger. He prowessed so much in qualifying, but he just wasn't able to, make up the same in the race. I think he just tried to, attack way too much. If we can here, John, have a look back with Smits and Van Driesche down towards the left-hander here of Ravazza, and then the year 29, he's going to be feeling a bit of pressure. Let's see what happens here with Dylan Schmitz as he heads his way now down that long main straight. He seems to be able to keep himself in tune here. He's managed to get away from Van Driesche off the exit, but again, I think he's trying to pull himself a little bit more forward there. Faster lap coming in here for Zeno Van Driesche. But they're so similar on the virtual energy as well. 80% still left in the tank. We see a flash there from Idrissa Spartes in the Sol Lamborghini. This one is really starting to fire up as Van Driesche starts to really make some move.
Yeah, Van Driesche with some great pace there. You can see at the gap battle at the bottom, of course, the fastest lap for Van Driesche last time by, and Dion Schmitz doesn't really have an answer, but Callum Kerrigan has unfortunately DNF'd down towards Aquaminerale through the second part. The rear end steps out, a bit of a snap over the gravel. Back round he goes once again. Raphael Huell goes past, and I think he has given up there indeed. Of course, a flat-spotted set of Michelins there. Not too good. This is Iridius Partes down into turn 1. Over the curbs he goes, nice and settled. A little bit of dust kicking up, and Partes is round in very similar fashion to Raphael Huell, losing the top blade of the top blade wing there on the back. It's almost a very crude Peugeot-esque build from the Lamborghini, up into, of course, the top end of Piratella. The rear end stepping out, no rear wing on that car, and I think Partes may have figured it out by that point that something is awry with the car, and down into, of course, Aquaminerale. I think possibly maybe the same mistake coming in. Yep, rear end goes to step out, back round it goes again, fires him towards the outside wall. And the last replay we've got here is our very own Jack Mays, who normally should be sat where I'm sat, but today he's sat in a Peugeot as he heads down to Aquaminerale. It's a hot spot of contention. Second part doesn't quite slow it up enough. Too fast in, back across the racing line. Very well avoided there from the Porsche. That was very close indeed. And back underway he goes. But some very scary moments there. Some very clippable moments, I would say, for our content team. and I'm sure you're going to see those at some point across our social media. Instagram, of course, Reels are doing very well over there. Drop us a follow if you haven't already, and YouTube Shorts proving ever so popular as well. Now, this is what we talked about, Adam. The traffic, it's already here. We're 12 minutes in, and Dion Schmidt's dispatching of the third, or the second, actually. I think that was Jablonski just ahead there in the Porsche, and straight away, Dreischer follows through. Next car up. Actually, that was... It could be Matthew Malcolm, I think, actually, because that's Emo Plata ahead. So the third or fourth car they've dispatched of already cutting off onto the racing line. Dion Schmidt's there trying to break the toe. So that was Matthew Malcolm. So Billy Octane and Van der Vecken in the background, the next two cars to come through. But we spoke about it earlier in the broadcast. It's going to be all about traffic management. And luckily for Malcolm, the next two cars catching him on a straight. Power difference, of course, very big in the hypercar versus LMGT3. So if you do catch somebody, we're going to pray that it's on a straight, but eventually we're going to see these cars coming through chicanes together. We're going to see battles probably split up in the braking zones between LMGT3s and hypercars, and Van Joosje isn't dropping anything from the back of Dion Schmitz. He's playing the long game, I think, here, Adam. I think Van Joosje knows he's got the quicker car, but he's just got to pray that either Schmitz makes a mistake, either traffic holds him up and opens the door to him, and then I think that BMW is going to be gone. But keeping Dion Schmitz honest is Dreischer at the moment. As we see, I think the LMGT3 leaders here, that's one Lexus, and there's certainly another Lexus ahead. Verstappen stays way wide to the right, and after the Lexus ahead, that is all the LMGT3s dispatched of for the first time, and we're only 14 minutes in.
Indeed we are, and this is Zeno Van Driesche. Van Driesche is going to be blocked here. Oh, he's got a spin, and that's going to be Schmitz. Unbelievable stuff. He's come back across the track, and he's potentially hit Martin Loring. Loring would have had to take avoiding action. That is some dramatic scenes here at Imola, and you can see there's 4 cars right at the back there. So we'll have to see what this is. This is looks like the Lamborghini. So unfortunately, that's not what we're after. This is the leader of Martin Lorenz, so we'll have to see what happened to him. Now, look at the background. You can see there Schmitz is coming up the hill. There was the lockup from the Lamborghini. Does that maybe have anything to do with it? Looks like Schmitz went down the inside. It's rear locking, bounced over the first cub. He come back onto the circuit. A massive avoiding action there from Martin Lorenz. Does he get back into P1? I'm not too sure about that. So we'll take an onboard view here of Martin Lorenz, and I'm hearing in my ear, in fact, he still is. This is on board with Martin Lorenz. So watch the right-hand side. You'll see an unsuspecting Dion Schmitz there. Just, oh, hello. Comes back onto the track. Oh, my goodness me. Wow. Take a bow there, Martin Lorenz. Or take a breather, because you know, he's going to need not just a set of tyre changed in that pit stop.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more than a set of tyres there for Martin Lorenz in the next stop. As we see a little bit more, this is after the incident that we just watched. That's Verstappen there. Lorenz ahead. Dion Schmitz, of course, on the inside. And he spins again. Splits between Octane and Van der Vecken. That was very brave indeed. Very lucky, I would say. And let's ride on board here. This is with Dion Schmitz. Van der Vecken in the background there. On the brakes, rear step out. Threads the needle between Octane and Van der Vecken. I have no idea how both drivers survived there, but it's gone from bad to worse for Dion Schmitz. This is live pictures we're showing you at the moment. This is towards the top of Aqua Minerale, turn 13, going back towards the Variante Alta again, and Dion Schmitz very unfortunately has gone round up the inside of Emo Plata, over the curb, onto the extra curbing, tries to slow it up, doesn't quite get it slowed up, dips a wheel into the gravel, and then the four-wheel drive system, I guess, is just utterly confused on that Toyota, doesn't know which wheel to send the torque to, and unfortunately Dion Schmitz, round he goes once again. It's gone from bad to worse. The leader now down into P11. He's going to have a really big mental reset at the moment, as Van Driesche takes the fastest lap of the race as a kind of ultimate flex of what can be done in clear air. And Van der Vecken in P2, 5 seconds down the road, Adam. It was all looking so good for Dion Schmitz, and it just proves how fast everything can unravel in the blink of an eye. He's gone from hero to zero, and now he has to really kind of drill himself back into the focus zone get back underway. There's still an hour and 3 minutes on the clock, so still quite a lot of time. I mean, we're still over the length of a traditional, sprint race format, should we say, that we host here at RCI. We're way over that by 3 extra minutes. So does he pit now? Does he, top off the virtual energy, take a new set of Michelins and try and go to the end? Or is it just worthy staying out, trying to eke into the bad set of tyres, maybe ruin them a bit more, get all your mistakes out of the way, then pit, mental reset, back underway for the final remainder of the race, and fight currently for position on the circuit. Fabian Schmidberger and Matthew Malcolm, after the nearly on pace driver is coming back through the field. We think Fabian has just come back through, and here comes a replay once the LMU system figures itself out. And I think Matthew Malcolm may have actually made a mistake, because Fabian Schmidberger here is very far back on the screen. I think that's dust being kicked up. That's Matthew Malcolm going wide at the Variante Villeneuve. And Fabian Schmidberger says, thank you very much. Dion Schmidt's one side, Fabian Schmidberger the other side. And Matthew Malcolm gets split. And a few fans in the chat on YouTube. Flanders Esports 1-2, hell yeah. It's a shame if Dion was looking like a good battle. It was indeed, Thomas. I do agree from up here. It was going to be a quite an electric fight, I reckon, if, Dion held it. Partez, yellow flag briefly around the circuit. He has got his top rear wing blade back on, so Lamborghini firing back on all the aero at least. And Zach Vermack joining us as well in the chat, not with us tonight. New wheelbase, I hear, for yourself, Zach.
Sounds like you were trying to talk to him, but I'm popping in here now. So that was a horrible moment, I think, for Dion Schmitz there. You were kind of asking the question there, John, of like, what do you kind of do in this situation? Top up on tyre, top on virtual energy. I think you need to be making a one-stop in this race. I think everyone is going to be doing that. So I'd say, whilst your tyres are looking like a 50 pence piece, you've got to potentially just try and just work on, just trying to make it to the, to the end there, until the end of your stint. So I think for Smits, he's just got to kind of drive through the bad, unless it is pretty much undrivable, then he's going to be forced to make a change. That was, that was going to be really, really difficult for him. Yes, Zach Vermack has confirmed that he's got a brand new steering wheel, because the P1 wheel broke, unfortunately. So Zach Vermack will be hopefully back for the next round, which will be next same time next week in Fuji, where we head from our European leg over to the land of the rising sun in Japan. So that would be a great scene. Great scenes there at the Fuji Speedway. We're on board here with Joe Dorber, a classic GT racer we've seen for many years over the course. Well, I say many years. I think I've only been here a year, but over the course of kind of the time I've been here, he's been very much a GT prominence. Currently running in third place. He's not a million miles off the Lexus ahead, but in kind of a sprint format for our LMGT3s and hypercars, this may kind of feel a little bit too far-fetched. But in towards the left-hander at the top of the hill, I think Joe Dorber at this moment in time is just trying to work out kind of proceedings. This is Hearn at the moment. He's trying to chase down Jablonski down in towards the left-hander of Toza. And they're going to continue to battle away, but it's still Van Driescher from Van der Becken from Octane and Boss, with Barr from Whittle, from Mares, and then Mays, Tucky, and Huel rounding up the top 10 in the hypercars. Martin Laurent, Verstappen, Dorber, Rybecki in P4 in the LMGT3s with Elmo Plata, the Dutchman, ahead of Schmidberger, Malcolm, Jablonski, and Hearn. That's your top 9 in the LMGT3. We had a momentary yellow, and we now tick underneath the 1 hour mark here, John. And again, this battle is starting to form, but of course, it's not the most ideal place. It's right at the back for the last little measly points.
Yeah, so I mean, we say, every point matters across the season, and certainly when you get to the final round in Bahrain, you're going to wonder what you could have done differently, as Hearn looks to try and size up a move into the final corner of Rabatza, but not close enough to fire that Porsche up the inside. Maybe you can use the slipstream to try and draw up alongside going into the first turn, although we do have the race leader coming back through to put another lap on, and this could be 3 wide as we head down towards the start-finish line. He's going to have to split them down the middle. Van der Eijs reads it perfectly across the line. He goes for a 131.714, and unfortunately, Hearn not close enough to get up the inside. Could have possibly used the brief blitz of the hypercar coming through for a little bit of extra tow, but not this time. Back into flying formation, the Porsches will go. And of course, like you said, Adam, the points, you know, we're talking here P8 and P9. So we're talking the difference between 12 and 10 points on the table for these two drivers. But that 2 points could make all the difference. We saw earlier the championship standings towards the back end of the top 10. 3 drivers in LMGT3 tied on points. So, you know, 2 points is going to matter when you get down to that stage as the Aston Martin Valkyrie blasts past across to the top of the hill. And looking back from Jablonski's car towards Hearn, he doesn't look close enough. Hearn's kind of got a little bit there. The gap kind of came down last lap, but it's very marginal. And looking at the best laps, oh, and a mistake down into Aqua Minerale. That's going to gift Hearn the place as Jablonski comes back on. Billy Octane has to take avoiding action in the hypercar. He's currently in P3 in that Toyota, 6 seconds off the back of Van der Vecken. And like we say, it is a Flanders Esports 1-2 currently with Van der Eijs and Van der Vecken 6 seconds apart between the two, and Billy Octane 6 seconds back. And we catch up with Jack Mays, who I'm singing tonight. It's very good to be here. Makes a change from racing for once for me as Van der Eijs goes quickest again. This man has no limits, I think, in this BMW, using every inch of those Michelin tires along the way. And that's Bartes spinning on the exit, avoiding action for both drivers, staying towards the right-hand side. Jack Mays probably having a bit of a wake-up call there as he's focused on the back of Huel, and all of a sudden there's a flash of a green Lamborghini across the front end and a Ferrari ahead. I think that's Tucky. I think this could be potentially a 3-way fight we've got on our hands between Mays, Huel, and Tucky at the moment, just ahead of the yellow Ferrari, who's lost a little bit of time along the way. Not sure what's happened to him. As we come across the line, you see there Tucky 134.191 last time by, losing a little bit of time compared to the 133.5s and 133.3s from the 2 cars behind. And Schmitz with a brief flash of a yellow flag. He's in trouble once again in that Toyota, as these 3 here, P8, P9 and P10, this is the difference between 12 and 9 points. So 3 points on the table here, and everybody wants every single point they can get, as Jack Mays looks a little bit more confident through Tozer, and Dion Schmitz calls it a day for now. 55.5 minutes on the clock, into the box, up on the jacks. It's going to be 4 fresh Michelins, a top up of the virtual energy and the fuel to get him towards the end. And this should be, Adam, his only single stop across this whole stint. Of course, we said we're expecting a one-stop race today. I think any more, you'll of course lose too much time from pit in to pit out. So Dion Schmitz now has to flip this first kind of quarter, not even a quarter of the race really, is it, at this point? And he's going to have a real big mental reset to get that Toyota back up through the hypercar order.
He is indeed. That's a horrible, horrible moment there for Dion Schmitz. He was, you know, he's not one of our kind of top runners, but, you know, he's done something to kind of change himself around. And we'll have, it looks like we'll have a quick replay of what seems to be Jack Mays as he heads his way in towards the first chicane. And that's going to be a rear locking there from the number 23 hypercar of Mason. He's gone 180 degrees, so just couldn't quite gather it all back up, but he's managed to get back on the racing circuit, managing to avoid the Ferrari and I believe the Porsche there that came into view. So he was in fact the lap car. No, it wasn't a lap car, but he was going right down in that one. So this is going to be Dion Schmitz here. This is why he got the kind of the yellow tag there. And was it a drop of the throttle there in toward the last corner? Yeah, the rear just go round on him kind of very early in the corner. You know, he turned the car in and it just went no. So I wonder if that was due to kind of the heat of the tires. This is going to be the Dutchman Emo Plata in the Mr. AF Corsa Ferrari, number 54, right in the curb there, out of Villeneuve. And then in towards Tozer. Oh, he's had a bit of a. I think it was yeah, it was a moment there of being told in my ear it was server lag. And then what about Idrisus Partes, the Polish driver? Has he dropped it for the fourth time, maybe fifth time? Oh, that's a snap of the rear, and it just seemed like so many drivers are spinning. You know, more spins than a Las Vegas roulette wheel.
That's a good turn there. I quite like that one. I might coin it for myself in a future broadcast. And apparently this one we're watching at the moment towards the top of the hill has only just happened. Over the curb, over the second curb, and the back end of the Lamborghini just going back again. I'm sure it's going to be overheated Michelin's that's causing this snappy nature again of the Lamborghini. It's probably not helping the poor hypercar, but completely different kettle of fish. As we see here, Jack Mays has made up a place on Tucky. Tucky has slipped back to P10, possibly an overtake replay here. This is Raphael Huell sizing up Tucky down into the first chicane of Tamburello, using the slipstream, fires the 963 up the inside of the Ferrari. Classic up the inside maneuver, I would say, although Huell a little bit too generous, I would say, given space. Tucky a bit slow off the corner. Jack May seizes the opportunity with both hands, forces Tucky out over the grass, and both drivers getting back on, as we see from another replay here. Jack Mays with a front of house seat, sees how cautious Huell is. The space, you could park almost another car in between the Porsche and the Ferrari. Sees Tucky slow, darts off the corner to the left, straightens up the steering, maximizes as much traction as he can. Tucky unfortunately having to take to the grass and the gravel, and Jack Mays up into P9, Tucky down into P10, and Raphael Huell seizes P8. And I was going to say, it's a different kettle of fish entirely for some of these drivers who have come from the likes of, you know, ACC and iRacing, not looking towards many hypercar activities, as Jack Mays looking very racy now, sizes up a move on Raphael Huell. This is a move I wasn't expecting to see tonight. Fires the Persia around the outside. Huell, I think, knows the fight was lost early on, and takes cautious into the first chicane to not ruin two of their races. And Jack Mays now up into P8. He's now going to set his sights on the back of Mares, although 14 seconds up the road, it's going to be a bit of a big ask. So I think this could be the fight we're going to be witnessing towards the end. I was going to say, a lot of these drivers coming from ACC and iRacing, where, you know, GT3, GT4 is the common format. So bigger cars, heavier cars, a little bit more forgiving, you know, TC, ABS, all the good stuff we love as kind of amateur pretend race car drivers. And suddenly you fire them into these hypercars, different kettle of fish, hybrid systems, batteries, lots of aero, very different in the way they drive. And suddenly some of the drivers not adapting as well as we think. I mean, you know, Raphael Huell, you put him in a GT3 Porsche, he's towards the top end of the grid every single time. But hypercars, maybe not his forte. As Fabian Schmidberger goes a lap down, the Ferrari in the background forcing open the door as they head through the Variante Alta. And I think, if my eyes weren't mistaking me there, Adam, I might have seen another fastest lap coming from our race leader briefly then.
I believe I saw that as two. There's a moment there for Jack Mays, and again he's gone off the road. And that's going to be another mistake to the tally here at RCI Season 5 Multi-Sprint Championship at Imola. But it just seems like at this moment in time, there's so much to kind of look at. Just having a discussion about in the virtual commentary box about what's going on with virtual energy, because it is really fluctuating. Oh dear, that's a Porsche around. Oh, he's going to stop in the middle there of Jakob Tucky, and I think Tucky had to take major avoiding action there. So we'll have to see how that all kind of panned out. So Mays tried to just make a move, but he managed to stick behind. He thought, you know, best of that, and then looks like the Porsche just went around 180 degrees. Oh my goodness me, Tucky was so close. Unfortunately, he's picked up a lot of dirt on the tires, and now he's struggling to put it into reverse gear. Raphael has DNF'd, and apparently there's been a lot of retirements in the last couple of minutes. It's going to be Richard Whittle maybe finding his way into the barrier, or is he going to put his way into the pits? He's come back across the circuit, bang! Massive hit into the tyre barrier for the Ferrari, and I wonder if that's going to be suspension done and dusted. Remember, it's on realistic some realistic damage here. What about the Lamborghini of Idrishu Partes, who's been going about as well as the Lamborghini hypercar? Ooh, yeah, that went about as well as the Lamborghini hypercar program. I'm not gonna lie. If you're a sports car viewer, you'll know how well that kind of program has went down. Massive snap, bang. John, what do you make of that?
Could see a little bit of a laziness in the weight transfer from side to side in that Lamborghini, and it was just enough when Partes jumped on the power to unsettle him and fire him into the wall. So very unfortunate there. High level of retirements tonight. We've lost Huell, Whittle, Partes, and Kerrigan all DNF'd across the left-hand side of the board there. So hypercars being very tricky to get their teeth into. I mean, put any of these guys, as I was saying earlier, with Huell into a GT3 car, and they wouldn't be phased at all. But hypercar, completely different kettle of fish, as Van der Vecken just sets fastest lap. Not sure if that's a server issue or an overlay issue from our end, but certainly the Aston Martin looking rather quick. A brief yellow flag showing up, and that's of course for server lag there, as the Aston Martin doesn't seem to go around Tozer properly. But Van der Vecken closing down the gap currently to the race leader. It was about 6 seconds, I think, last time we checked in there, and Van Drijscher now 3.7 seconds to the good ahead, as we see a yellow flag out for Jablonski in P9 briefly there in LMGT3. Quickly went away though, so looks like he's back underway entirely. Looks down towards Tozer, possibly something maybe happened. We've seen a few Porsches struggling through the Villeneuve chicane in their time, but no harm, no foul there. Back underway. As we see the gaps here at the bottom between Van Drijscher and Van der Vecken. Best lap 131.5 versus a 131.4, which was set last time by as Jablonski's off the road. That's at the top of the hill into turn 9, of Piratella, and all looks well coming through turn 8. Of course, the kink before he hits turn 9, jumps on the brakes, turns in, and maybe a little bit too much speed in the mid corner. And the back end of the Porsche, of course, overtaking the front, as we see quite a lot of the time, engine over the rear axle. And Ted has caught another replay straight after as he heads down into an Aqua Minerale over the inside curb a little bit. Tries to check up for the second bit, and the back end letting go on that one. And Ted Edwards might have spotted something, possibly suspension damage from the first yellow we saw. And I did say the Villeneuve chicane being a bit of a problem for the Porsches. Spins it round, no contact with the wall. Billy Octane coming through, stays way out of the way of the spinning Porsche. Possibly drive-through penalty now, given for Jablonski, as we catch the replay for the penalty given here. Again, underway, big wiggle over the inside, a little bit too fast, time gain too much, and game says drive-through penalty for yourself. So Porsche coming down the pit lane, that should cool the Michelin tires off nicely, and fingers crossed Jablonski can get back underway and kind of focus a little bit more, as Van der Vecken goes faster once again with a 131.3. We're, what are we into the race now? We're about 35 minutes, if my comms box maths is kind of on point. 35 minutes into the race, Adam, you think the tyres would be, not at their potential best right now, a little bit worn, a little bit scrubbed. Of course, fuel is burning off, so car in theory is getting lighter. However, still lighting up the timing boards is Van der Vecken, and Van Drijscher is going to be probably looking in his mirrors a little bit more than he should be at this stage of the race, as the charging Aston Martin comes back towards him.
Yeah, there's still a lot of potential. Weather looks to be saying the exact same all throughout, but it looks like that is going to be George. I think that's George Barr right behind. Yes, so George Barr and Kevin Boss having their battle. Jablonski was lighting up the screen there. Otherwise, that would have been due to a penalty. It looks like George Barr will not be, won't be looking too good. There is Andrei Jablonski. Oh my goodness me, almost Could have been Hearn, I believe, potentially. Sorry, my error. That was Matt Malcolm. No, was it? Yeah, was it?
Yeah, it's Malcolm.
Let's
Into
have a
the
look.
Villeneuve again, Adam. Villeneuve chicane, Porsche. Let's see what happens.
Too wide there on the right hander, so I think just got pulled to the left through the left, went to the right. The car just became a bit lazy and then just lost it. And that's really unfortunate for him. And this is back with the live action. Let me read some of our our partners here at RCI. Wait, because there is a little bit of traffic in the mix. But we start with RSS Ready Set Sim, where you can build your own sim rig on your own budget. So be sure to check them out in the link in the description below, and you'd be able to look through whatever you want and see what you can potentially build for your dream sim rig. We also have Coach Dave Delta, who can help you become an even better sim racer, whether you're an esports driver or you are a regular or just a casual sim racer. Coach Dave Delta have so much, from their applications, their setups, their coaching, and to much more. You can visit them down in the link in the description below. We also have a big thank you to Green Man Gaming, who can give us huge saving on PC games, including new releases. And a big thank you for them for helping us with our savings, because games are getting pretty pricey nowadays. You can see them in the top left there, and you can also see them down in the description below. Motor Racing is a partner of ours, and of course they produce some very high quality sim racing gear, and you can have a look through their entire website. And with the upgrades that Motor Racing has introduced in the last couple of years, they've been slowly becoming one of the most fastest growing sim racing companies to ever come out. The likes of Fanatec and Thrustmaster as well, they're on a par with them. And you can also get some flight sim gear if you are into your Microsoft Flight Simulator. You can check Motor Racing down below. Pimax also delivers class-leading clarity and resolution with its current range of VR headsets. So if you want to do a little bit of VR virtual reality racing, you absolutely can. And as well, just a little cut off there. Matt Malcolm has had a retirement. We've got one more thank you, which we'll do after Matt Malcolm's retirement. But through the Variante Alta chicane, loses it on the exit, and Matt Malcolm decides to call it a day. And a big thank you to Motorsports UK for making us one of the recommended esports communities here at RCI. A massive thank you to Motorsports UK as well. Here is Milan van der Vecken in the Aston Martin, and ignore that. That was completely server lag, so that's kind of twice it's happened. But a big thank you once again to all of our partners here at Racing Club International. As Blonsky, don't get yourself in a twist, and go and check those guys out down below.
Yeah, fantastic partners with us here at RCI. You can see their logos, of course, revolving around in the top right-hand side of the broadcast throughout. And as Adam said, all the links are down below. And all the links down below as well for the social media for RCI as well, including Discord, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So be sure to drop us a like, drop us a follow, join the Discord, and get involved with the community. And you can, of course, find all of our events over on SimGrid. That's thesimgrid.com/communities/racerci. So similar to the website, in a bit of a different guise, we're moving over to SimGrid for higher reach. So be sure to get your name down for any events. And Van der Vecken, once again, tricking our replay tool into something that's not, and off the circuit in the lag. And we're trying to figure out where, of course, he's lost 3 seconds to the race leader. Nothing coming up on the replay other than a few false positives, and Ted is equally perplexed as we are, and I'm not sure if he's lost 3 seconds. Was he that close? Okay, apparently half a second. I thought the gap came down from 6 to 3 seconds, and it's about 3-ish seconds. So maybe losing a second somewhere could be a bad run through traffic. Of course, like we've seen through the chicanes, and maybe Ted's just trying to trace his thoughts back, and he's realised his errors of the ways. I was going to make a point about Billy Octane. Billy Octane, of course, has come around the Villeneuve chicane multiple times now to a Porsche sat broadside in the middle of the road. So Billy probably going to be pretty upset with constantly trying to dodge LMGT3 cars, but nevertheless doing a fantastic job of it as he dispatches of one of the Lexuses. I'm going to say that's for Verstappen, judging by the fact that Lawrence has just crossed the timing gate, and it is indeed. Fastest lap, though, speak of the devil, Christoph Verstappen, 1:43.321, faster than his teammate, or ex-RCI teammate, should we say, or current friend in person, Martin Lawrence. Two of them know each other very well indeed. And Joe Dorber on to the bottom step of the podium, 1:44.6. So that's the pace difference we're looking at. And Joe Dorber is no slouch by any means in a GT3 car. Excellent pace from that man. I've raced him many a time through RCI, and very quick indeed. So you can only imagine the pace that Verstappen and Lawrence have currently at the moment. Ted briefly flashing up the pit stops. Dion Schmitz, of course, the only hypercar we've seen down the lane, and Hearn, the only LMGT3 car we've seen down the lane. So we're expecting a big flurry of pit stops coming in. And Kevin Boss apparently cares very much about fuel usage. 20% still in his virtual energy tank. Everybody else dipping in to the mid to low teens. Kevin Boss only just going red now when everybody else has been red for quite a while. So Kevin Boss, very economical driving Dutchman, if I say so myself, and very good at the moment up into P4. George Barr, though, breathing down his neck, keeping him honest in the Aston Martin Valkyrie, as Van Drijsje again goes quickest. Where's this pace coming from, Adam?
I'd love to know. You know, Zeno, if you could tell me what you had for breakfast or lunch or dinner, whatever, because I would love to know what you had to wake up with that pace in your back pocket. Unbelievable. But you've also got to give credit to Milan van der Becker, because the BMW has just been lighting up the timing screens like a Christmas tree, whilst Milan van der Becker has just, you know, just been thereabouts, you know, still in second. But this battle continues to rage on, with George Barr looking to float his way around the outside of Kevin Boss. But a very valiant defense there from the Dutchman. But, you know, Barr is not one to give up pretty easy. And it looks like Kevin Boss is going to go pretty defensive. I wanted to get on to the conversation here of Kevin Boss, because, of course, we did kind of discuss that he was pretty good on his energy. He's, in fact, 6% higher than George Barr, who's been pushing like absolute mad here. They just negotiate one of the Acodis ASP Lexuses, heading up towards Piratella. Yeah, Kevin Boss is looking to go potentially for a shorter stop here in the pit lane. He's going to try and really, you know, play his cards potentially well here. So if he could potentially just, you know, just put himself in a really, really promising place, well, then there will be some really a big open opportunity for him to maybe climb up into third. He is 80 seconds, albeit behind Billy Octane. But, you know, there's still no reason why he can do all the saving that he possibly can before then coming into the pits and then just fueling up for the remainder of the race. And that will go up in his virtual energy tank. So I think the question here is, John, is who's going to be the first to pit here? We're just scanning the kind of left side of your graphics screen just to see who is going to be the one making their way into the pit lane. Well, it looks like 6% there I'm seeing for Milan van der Becken. I think that's 5% there for Wojciech Rybecki. Emoplat, I think that's 4% there for Fabian Schmidberger as well, down there in P6 in the LMGT3 class. So I'm not entirely sure where the likes of Schmidberger is on the racetrack. Like, of course, he's the lowest percentage out of everyone on the racetrack at the moment, but I expect him to be in pretty soon, depending on where his track location is.
Yeah, I think the nearly on pace driver. Right on time there. Very well called. Fabian Schmidberger down the lane from P6 in the McLaren, of course. Not the best start for the German driver. However, stuck at it, plugged away, still in P6, still a good haul of points. And of course, with a few retirements with Malcolm and Jablonski, it's going to be easy points to take away here today. Hearn behind, a really big gap back to the Porsche, although we know Hearn has pitted, so we'll have to see how Schmidberger comes off the lane. Emo Plata just ahead, of course. Rybecki, Dorber, Verstappen, and Lawrence, all with healthy energy usage at the moment. And we have a replay from Emo Plata getting lapped down into the Villeneuve chicane. Looks like the front end of the Ferrari washing a little bit wide there in the dirty air. And it's going to be another baited moment for Ted. And as we see the Ferraris ghosting off into the inside and the outside, Ted getting done dirty by the replay tool once again. Fabian Schmidberger, though, back underway. 79% of energy popped into the tank. He'll come off the pit lane and out into, I think that's Martin Lawrence just sailed past there. So Fabian Schmidberger technically goes a lap down. However, it will be a case of course, Lawrence still yet to pit. 7% left in that Lexus, so we'll expect to see maybe Lawrence in this lap or next. Emo Plata on 2%. We're in theory going to see him come down the lane as it drops down to 1% now. The Ferrari hanging out to the right-hand side. Indeed, under the pit stop they will go. It's a very tricky entry here at Imola. You come off the final corner with such good speed that by the time you get to the pit limiter line, you have to brake a lot sooner than you realize. And it does catch a lot of drivers out. The first to blink from Hypercar is Van der Vecken. 2% of energy in the Aston Martin Valkyrie. He will come down the lane. Van Drijsje will go for another one. I think Billy Octane somewhere behind as well. He's going to go for another one. 6% left in the Toyota. So an extra lap from Octane. He'll move up into second very briefly as we head back towards Kevin Boss, the most economical Dutchman in the server at the moment. 10% left in the Peugeot. I think that's running on some kind of PD130 engine, 80 miles to the gallon maybe. Something under the hood of that Peugeot. Kevin Boss is managing very well indeed as he drops down to 9%. And the car behind, of course, George Barr comes down the pit lane. Van Drijsje, we're looking at 2%. He's cutting it very fine as he heads up the hill, out through Aqua Minerale. Drops down to 1%, using every ounce of energy that BMW has to offer. And jumping over the curbs, of course, it might be a very big lift and coast down the hill towards Ravazza. Going to be cutting it super, super fine, Van Drijsje. Let's have a look. Very small slither of energy on the right-hand side there as he comes down. It's a big coast into Ravazza, 0.8. Ted's telling me in my ears. So he's going to make it. It's going to be very fine, but you can see there the sheer speed he comes into the pit lane. 200 kph before scrubbing it down towards 60 kilometers an hour. And very well done indeed. 0.4 of energy. If you could even measure 0.4 of an energy, Adam, it's going to be such a minuscule amount for the BMW driver into the box on his jacks. We'll have to see how the gap comes out once the pit stops are complete. But we are starting to see these hypercars coming through now.
Yeah, indeed. I've been, mighty impressed with Zeno Andrusha so far, putting in lap after lap after lap. Billy Octane goes past it on 3%, and there is going to be a massive reaction from our producer, Ted Edwards. And I think he's very worried about what his friend in the Toyota is up to, because that's now gone down to 2%, Rip. And look at potentially Jakob Taki as well. Kevin Boss will be able to do maybe another lap or two. Actually, no, well, I'd say two. That's going to be cutting it quite fine here. I'm hearing potentially he might be all right around about 2 laps. So, Kevin Boss looking to potentially just try and extend that a little bit further than he possibly can. We'll see if Jack Mays will come into the pits, and as well as Jakob Taki. Martin Lawrence from the sorry, this is Christopher Strapen. So both Lexuses are being told that into the pit lane here. This is pretty crucial as well. Both of the Lexuses are going to be heading in towards pit lane to top up their virtual energy. You can see Martin Lawrence already getting his service done. Verstappen will go past. He'll turn into his box, and there you can see him getting topped up. Now, what is kind of the what is 0.4 for Billy Octane and being sold? But yeah, what is kind of the percentage you want to come out of the pits on at the moment to be able to finish the race here? Billy Octane. My goodness me, you have done pretty well, my friend. He'll head his way into the pit lane. And look at that, one of the nearest boxes in the pit lane stops on his marks. Fair play, honestly, my word. So that just now gives the information that, Kevin Boss could potentially do another 2 laps here as he now enters the lead of the race, just darting his way through the Porsche and the Lexus of what seems to be, I believe, Hearn and either potentially Verstappen then. So it looks like now it's going to be Kevin Boss and I want to say Jack Mays potentially, who's not pit yet. In fact, right on cue there, Jack Mays is into pit lane here in the hypercars.
Yeah, Jack Mays down the lane. Kevin Boss still circulating. Meanwhile, Van Drijcher, of course, Van der Vecken and Octane all completing their stops. So we'll see the order shuffling around in just a second when the most economical Dutchman ever comes down the pit lane in his Peugeot. I think that's George Barr just ahead. So George Barr, of course, will save himself going down a lap when Kevin Boss peels into the lane. Oh, a mistake. Jumping over the curb through Variante Alta. I think he's just about saved it. He hasn't picked up a drive-through penalty from the game, so managed to scrub enough speed off, but that's certainly going to wake Kevin up, I think, during this late stage of the race. 27 minutes to go. We're under the half-an-hour mark now, and Kevin Boss, one of your last hypercars, I believe, to pit. Of course, we saw Dion Schmitz in earlier. The last car, I'm being told, actually, by our broadcaster, which is very good to know. So, Kevin Boss, if you ever want to go on a road trip with him, he is going to be the man to save you your fuel bill with his economical driving. So, plenty of lift and coast for Kevin. He jumps into the box, gets on his mark, and the virtual energy tank begins filling up. As you can see, left-hand side of your screen there, Ted Edwards briefly flashed up. Everybody completing 1 stop, which is exactly what we thought would happen. And Jack Mays already chomping at the bit on the back of George Barr coming out of the pit lane. And George Barr, I believe, is up a position from Jack Mays. Jack Mays down to P7. George Barr actually up to P6 in the Aston Martin Valkyrie. We're going to watch Kevin coming out of the pit lane to see where he filters in. Of course, we know Van Drijcher, Van der Vecken 1 and 2. Billy Octane goes past as well, so Kevin Boss should slot back in to P4, just ahead of Mars there in P5. So hypercar order looking relatively settled at the moment. Martin Lawrence leads Christopher Strapen nearly 7 seconds to the good. Joe Dorber now 22 seconds off the back of your lead duo, and Wojtek Rebecki 11.6 seconds off the back of him. So gaps very spread out at the moment, Adam. It's going to take a mistake or a moment in traffic to bring people back together. And Jack Mays, rear locking from Jack Mays once again into Ravazza. A big snap, manages to catch it though. That's the crucial thing that we've not seen from these drivers tonight. Once the rear end steps out, it tends to kind of go very suddenly. And Jack Mays very alert there, as he would be in the comms box if he was here tonight. Caught the slide, very good. Bit of a time loss from Mays. Of course, George Barr now has disappeared up the road. That's about big time loss. Just waiting for the lap time to tick over. You can see how scrabbly he is over the curbs of Tamburello. Really needs to kind of wind himself back, focus on the task at hand. 25 minutes just ahead, and it's going to be a long 25 during these late stages of the race. As a driver, you think an hour easy, no issues. I got an hour in the bag every day, do it with my eyes shut. As soon as you add that extra 20 minutes on, it begins to kind of play with you a little bit, and you think, oh, this clock's taking an awful long time to count down, and suddenly the race seems a little bit longer than you once remember that hour slot being. And I do this horrible thing when I'm driving. I constantly flick up, look at the clock every single corner, and you feel like the time is just never ending. And during these late stages of the race, you just want it to end. You just want to get out the rig. You're hot, you're bothered, you've been managing traffic. You just want to get it done with. As Christopher Strapen yielding very safely there. Dion Schmitz coming through, filtering past Hearn as well, who's going to go a lap down, actually. I think Lawrence has already gone past and yielding to P2 very sensibly there for Hearn. I think he knows he's kind of not out of contention entirely, but he just wants to take away P7's worth of points, and could be a nice chunk of points towards his championship scoring, of course, going on. 14 points is what Hearn will take away from this race. So still a healthy amount there just for sticking it out at this stage. Of course, we've lost Malcolm, we've lost Jablonski, and a few others, of course, on the board. And Ted Edwards reminded me, of course, Hypercar being quite a formidable category for retirements. Huell, Whittle, Partes, and Kerrigan all out of Hypercar, and LMGT2, LMGT3 even. We've, of course, lost Malcolm and Jablonski. I don't think Schmidt started, and the other three at the bottom there weren't on the server. So it's 14 points. It's a healthy amount of points, I would say, Adam, just for circulating around in the John Dalton zone, let's say.
I was wondering before we hopped on here if you were ever going to mention that, and we did.
It's always getting a mention.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, now I can take that off on my bingo card. But yeah, in terms of the standings, Zeno Andrisha will be getting a humongous 30 points to his championship. And after missing round 3, this is going to be pretty massive for the Belgian driver. You know, he's going to now jump up past both of his fellow Belgians. We're now just seeing Wojciech Rybecki in the BMW. And of course, we see one of the Porsches there. I believe that's Hearn in the. Well, there was it's a fake sponsor. I don't know how much I can say with the sponsor, but you know what we can. It's inspired by the Rothmans livery that's been put on the way I know it is from kind of the mid 90s Williams Formula One cars when Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve were winning world championships in them. But as I was saying, Andrisha will head up into second. Milan van der Vecken will head past Thomas Korberg because there's only 4 points between them. You know, Martin Vesely is a long way ahead of the rest. And speaking of Ferrari, there is Jakob Tucky, the penultimate driver in that queue of hypercars. With 21 minutes left in this race, I think it's been a pretty successful round here for some, like Van Driescher, like Van der Becken, like Billy Octane, potentially like Kevin Boss, because, you know, he's starting to try and just close up there on Octane, but we'll have to see how that Peugeot goes about this one. Also in LMGT3, I think Lexus has been one of the biggest winners out of all of this. Yes, you know, they've... I was going to say they've lost a car, but they actually haven't. They're 1 and 2. You know, they're pretty much the biggest winners. I think Joe Dorba will be happy with the podium in there as well. But I think one of the biggest losers as well will be Fabian Schmidberger, who was an absolute star in the qualifying, but just couldn't hold it all together come the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the big winners, as you say, there's also the flip side of that coin is the big losers. And I mean, Dion Schmitz, what a performance! You know, start of the race, jumped up to P1, led for a good considerable amount of the race, and then it all came unraveled rather quickly. One lockup led to another, and before we know it, we're down in P11. But of course, with the retirements, boosting himself up to P9. So still going to get a good chunk of points. Ted Edwards wanting to remind everybody of how it all fell apart really for Dion Schmitz here. This was the move down into Ravazza. It was a rear locking and threaded the needle between Octane and Van der Vecken. I still no idea how this one's happened. It's one of those lucky things in sim racing that you know, you feel the rear go, you kind of clench as a driver, you stand on the middle pedal as hard as you can, try and get it stopped in time, and somehow the luck of the gods thread the needle between the two and managed to get back underway without harming too many people's progress. A little bit of a close one for Jack Mays as he came around Ravazza, and then of course we saw a few other mistakes from Paul Dion, but he stuck it out, and that's the main thing I like about a lot of drivers. They have a terrible race, but they're still here and they still see the checkered flag at the end of it. And I feel like it's all far too easy sometimes just to give up, call it a day, garage door down, I'm done, I'm going to go enjoy my Friday evening, I'm going to pop down the pub or whatever people are doing these days. And Fabian Schmidberger, like Ted says, another one on the flip side of LMGT3, started very well up into the top step, or the lower step of the podium, should we say, and then it all became unraveled very quickly for the German driver. And I think Ted wants to remind us of possibly how that happened, but we do see the positions lost and gained on the left, although I don't believe this is actually accurate. Martin Lawrence hasn't obviously gained 5 positions from pole sitting to now. It's very broken. We're going to ignore this overlay. We're going to go back to the interval and the lap counter. It seems to be the most reliable one for us up here in the box. But like you said, Adam, big winners, big losers, championship gainers, championship slumps, going to be around to forget. Of course, next week, as you said earlier on in the broadcast, we head to the land of the rising sun, where we go to Fuji for the next round before rounding off finally in Bahrain, which again is a bit of a famous circuit now from the early days when it became introduced onto the Formula 1 calendar. We see all forms of motorsport now hitting Bahrain, so a fantastic venue and circuit. But this man here, Van Drijker, not the best of starts into the first chicane of the Tamburello. It kind of came unraveled quite quickly as the Flanders esports cars kind of battled amongst themselves, nearly took each other out, promoted Dion Schmitz up into that glorious top step of the podium. But he's been chipping away as Van Drijker, and he's managed to get himself back up into, of course, the race lead through the midpoint of the race. And he's accrued a 10-second lead now. When we first checked in with this, I think it was about 3.5 before the pit stops. It's 10 seconds and rising. We've seen fastest laps after fastest laps from this man. We've seen Van der Vecken responding back. And Billy Octane and Kevin Boss have just been in the background. They've just been cruising around the beautiful Italian countryside, enjoying an evening of racing. And they're going to net themselves a good haul of points as well. But Van Drijker, very untouchable, I would say, Adam. And I think this is kind of representative of what we're going to see in the latter half of the season from this BMW driver.
Yeah, indeed. You talk about the Italian countryside, you're now making me want a home-cooked pizza. I can't lie. That was, it's been a while since I've had one of those, but it's what you get in Italy. It's a very, very exquisite country, and I think a lot of people, especially Europeans, would love to go visit. I haven't personally gone there myself, but it's a bucket list for me, and especially if I do find myself near Bologna, I might as well go here to Imola, because I believe it is just a public park, really, in the infield of this circuit. You've got all the trees, all the paths, I think you've also got a kind of a tennis court just on the inside of Tamburello as well. So you've got a running track as well, plenty of places to do exercises, but where better else to do? As I was saying before, I was interrupted with potential. Rudely interrupted. Some of the best exercises to do here, I'd say, on the racetrack. I don't know about you, John, but it is one of the more exquisite parts of this Imola kind of park.
Yeah, certainly so. It's a very nice part of the world, and another nice part of the world, Spa. Ventured there last year with the Nearly On Pace crew. We had a bit of an outing towards the wet grounds, and it's really good to get kind of up close and personal with what you see in a game compared to what you see in real life. And it's awfully scary how accurate games are getting now. Even for us, we did circuit walks every day. We walked around Spa kind of 3 or 4 times by the end of it. And you walk around and you think, there's the braking point I use. There's this, there's that. Like, it's so scary how accurate simulators are these days. And I know myself and Jesse, when we get on a broadcast, we always kind of reminisce about, what we've come from to what we are now. And sim racing has grown kind of exponentially in the last, say, 5 to 10 years, I would say, compared to what it was. It was a very niche kind of nerdy hobby back in the day. And now it seems, a lot more kind of relatively acceptable in the real world. We've got communities forming left, right, and center. There's so much variation now. You can always find something to race somewhere. And speaking of something to race somewhere, Mondays, if you're at a loose end, we are, of course, beginning our new Cup Car Cup on Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's a championship that we've done before, but it's built around some of the most exciting single-make GT-style machinery, including the Porsche 911 Cup, Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, and, of course, the Ferrari 488 Challenge. The format mixes things up across the season, with the opening 2 rounds featuring a double 30-minute sprint race with no pit stops required. So that's going to be flat-out aggressive racing from start to finish. And then from round 3 onwards, the championship shifts into a 1-hour, more traditional style format, introducing the mandatory pit stop, a 30-minute pit window, and fixed refueling, bringing a strategy, of course, into play. It's a championship that combines short, intense sprint racing with longer, more strategic rounds, so it really offers something for everyone. So if you are looking to get involved in an ACC championship, that's beginning this Monday. That's obviously 3 days from now, on Monday evening. You can sign up via the SimGrid website. You can, of course, find us on thesimgrid.com/communities/race RCI. Get your name down for that one. We are trying to balance cars a little bit, so you may get shifted, but as it currently stands, Kevin Boss gave us an update this evening. We have 18 cars on the grid, 4 Ferraris, 6 Lamborghinis, and 8 Porsches. So the split is looking relatively similar. And if you do want to race our broadcaster, Ted Edwards, I believe he has told me tonight that he has signed up. A bit of a comeback for Ted. I've not seen him on the grid in a while. Apparently, he's not read that the round 1 and 2 was 30-minute sprint races and thought, you know what, I'm going to challenge in the Ferrari for this one. So if you want to race Ted in a Ferrari versus a Porsche versus a Lamborghini, Mondays is the place that you're going to be doing that. That's over on ACC as we ride on board with the LMGT3 leader, Martin Lawrence, as he sails towards the checkered flag. Of course, just over 12 minutes to go. Another car dispatching of him on the straight. I think that possibly Jack Mays, if it was a white-shaped Peugeot. It was indeed. My eyes do not deceive me, as he's been darting around the Italian countryside rather than up here in the commentary box where we normally expect to see him. Tipping his car, of course, through the slowest part of Tozer. Van Drijscher still out front, though. The lead is going up. Van der Vecken, another second down in the Valkyrie. Billy Octane just behind, again, a good, healthy chunk of a lead. 28 seconds, I think that said, before he crossed the line. Kevin Boss, 24 seconds down on Octane. And Mares there, 11 seconds off the back of Boss. George Barr running wonderfully well. 15 seconds down. Jack Mays was locking behind him, as we actually see a battle on circuit for position. Ted has surprised himself. Dion Schmitz has just got past Tucky on the screen at the moment. Dion Schmitz, of course, on a bit of a comeback drive. So P8 should be good for Dion Schmitz, and this is how it happened down into the Villeneuve chicane. Looks like Tucky is healthily ahead by this point, so possibly a mistake, and it was a little bit running wide on the exit. Had to lift, lost a lot of momentum towards Tozer, and I think Tucky kind of realized that the fight was kind of done by that point. Gave up the inside line to Schmitz. Schmitz goes through, tries to weave and break the toe. Doesn't want to give him the toe towards Piratella. Tries to break it somewhat. I don't think there's all too much slipstream going on up the hill, but Schmitz thought there might be, so tries to break it. Off now, 1.2 seconds to the good. So Schmitz will make up a position. He will kind of turn his race a little bit around, and that's going to make the difference on points from 10 to 12 points. So netted himself an extra 2 points towards his championship efforts, and he's just going to probably be now thinking, Adam, for the last 11 minutes, I'm going to try not to lock the rears of this Toyota and get towards the checkered flag.
Indeed, he will be. I think there will still be a little bit of kind of, you know, a bit of PTSD for Smits there to you know, not lock up the car, because you know, that's going to be really troublesome for the Toyota driver, because you know how many mistakes he made in the space of a minute was, you know, nothing short of a horror show for him. And we now see the Porsche of Mares go through. I think he's sitting in 5th there, just under 133.446. He's quite the way behind Kevin Boss, and I had quite a high expectation of Kevin Boss trying to latch on to Billy Octane, but you know, it was that moment where he just came out of the pits and then tried to get the tyres fired up. But remember, those tyres come out, I'm pretty sure, pretty cold as far as my memory goes aware. But at this moment in time, it does seem to be that you know, Billy Octane has really just kind of built his advantage over the Peugeot and as well as the Porsche ahead. So he's just now going to, I think, for a lot of the drivers, I'll say it now, and I'll probably say it again. The main focus is just going to be sticking it out onto the racetrack. Looking around as well, Schmidt and Tucky, I think, is still the closest battle on the racetrack at the moment. 1.7 seconds, make that 2 seconds as the gap continues to fluctuate. We currently have a look on board here with Emo Plata in the Ferrari 296 GT3. heading through the Variante Alta chicane, such a really tricky chicane, such a sketchy chicane to go through, because I think if you do feel that disconnection of the car, there is a high potential that you can, you know, lose the rear completely, as we've seen multiple drivers do. Blue flags here for the Dutchman Emo Plata as he allows what seems to be the Aston Martin of Milan van der Vecken through. No, sorry, that's my error. That's George Barr in 6th place there. He's carrying his way now down all the way through. Will he be able to potentially go after Marez in the end? I'm not too sure. There's still plenty of opportunities left in this race here, with 8 minutes left to go on the clock. I think a lot of our drivers here are just going to, you know, they're just trying to look around potentially. But yeah, I think there's so many gaps that need to be bridged there. It's quite a difficult task. You know, you've got Rebecca and Plata, that's separated by 6.5 seconds. But again, that's one of those where it's really coming down to a big mistake to Rebecca, and also Lauren and Verstappen is around 9 seconds, and that's going to be through a massive mistake on the part of Martin Loring. So for our drivers now, it is just about staying focused. Don't do any silly business. Make your way to the end of the race here with 7.5 minutes left to go.
Ted Edwards has just noticed something rather impressive. Dion Schmitz is on 9% of virtual energy. If you look towards the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see everybody's energy bar quite comfortably into the 20s. I mean, Kevin Boss has just dropped to 20% and turned red. Of course, Jack May's on 19%. But Dion Schmitz on 9% with 7 minutes to go. I don't think he's going to make this one unless he's doing extreme amounts of lift and coast or clutching in. I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to make the end on this one, Adam. I think he's going to have to. He's going to have to come down the lane. I think Ted does tell me to ignore the throttle bar on the right hand side. It can be slightly misleading, but the kind of lifting and coasting as he gets towards the braking zones is, of course, correct, as he comes fully off throttle onto the brake pedal, off the brake pedal, tips it in, but not lifted an awful lot as he comes down to Ravazza, so he may have to pit again. I don't know if it's touch and go for the Toyota driver. It's roughly about 2.5% of energy per lap, just over 6 minutes on the race clock, so we've got at least 3 or 4 laps to go. I don't think he's possibly going to make this one unless he has timed it insanely well, or he knows something that we don't up here in the comms box. Of course, Van Drijker is your leader. He's running wide out of the first chicane. He's really pushing hard, is Dion Schmitz. He's not letting up at all, flicking the Toyota elegantly through the chicanes. Of course, a little bit of traffic ahead. Not going to be too much detriment to him. I think it's Fabian Schmidberger, it is, in the McLaren. As they head up the hill, I think Fabs is going to be rather sensible. Sees this one coming, a flash of the lights from Schmitz to signal I am going for this one. Sensibly doesn't pull over onto the racing line. We see it all too much with hypercars. They kind of lap a GT3, pull straight over onto the racing line, slam on the brakes, and then of course the GT3 can't match the scrub speed of a hypercar, especially with all the energy recovery built into them. It's a very hard car to try and outbrake, especially in a much heavier, less agile LMGT3 car. So sensible lapping from Dion Schmitz there. He's down to 5% of energy. Started the lap on roughly 7. Of course, 5 minutes on the clock. I think this is going to be too touch and go, Adam, to get him to the end. Very twitchy as he heads down to Ravazza, probably thinking, do I need to pit? Do I need to stay out? If he does come in, I think it's going to be a very last moment kind of pit stop. He's going to run it all the way out to the kind of 0%, like we saw Billy Octane do in his Toyota on the early stages of the race. 4.7 on the line, roughly 2.5% a lap. So you do the maths, he's going to be out of fuel in the next 2 laps or so. And Van Drijker shows no let up of slowing down. Of course, he could even potentially put this one an extra lap and really put a spanner in the works for Dion Schmitz. Of course, he's done so well to fight back, see it out towards the end, and even passing Tucky 6.5 seconds to the good now on that one. So I think Schmitz is coming back down the lane, Adam. I think Van Drijker isn't going to let up. He's going to keep pushing towards the end. Van der Vecken, of course, 15 seconds off the back of him, but we've seen how quickly leads can deteriorate in this race. So Lawrence Verstappen locked together, I think, quite quickly over the line in quick succession there. Has that gap come down, or is that my eyes picking up something that I would like to see? It hasn't. 9 seconds on Lawrence and Verstappen. So all the gaps relatively spaced out now, Adam. I think other than Dion Schmidt's pitting, I think this is what we're going to see come the checkered flag in the next 4 minutes.
3.5 minutes remaining, and Dion Schmidt's in a little bit of struggle, a little bit on the struggle bus here in the minute. I think I was calculating around about the 9-minute mark that he was around about the 7-minute mark, run about there. Here you go. That he had to do 1.1% around every single minute, which is in fact impossible. So Dion Schmitz will now make his way into the pits. He's already kind of dead last. He was battling with Jakob Taki, but not the ideal situation of having to make a secondary stop. And this is kind of the domino effect of what he had to do. He's kind of fueled himself up for 10%. So I think he probably will hit 0 on the line. And that seems to be a very, very sad Dion Schmitz not wanting to, hit the track in a lot of joy there. Still a lot to try and get through. But it's only 2.5 minutes, which I think will very much breeze by. But I think, John, you've been in the car a lot over the last couple of years. And you will kind of know that feeling of, there's, very little left to go of the race. You're, over 90% into the race. You still feel like there's a long race to go. As here we see Zeno van Driesche heading his way over the timing beam. And we should be having 2 more laps here at the Autodromo Enzo E Dino Ferrari. If you haven't already, like the stream, drop us a follow on all our social medias, and if you go over to the website at Racing Club International, you will be able to you'll be able to find us in Discord, and then you'll be able to join all of our incredible races. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and under Racing Club International, or on X, Twitch, and Instagram at RCI Racing.
Yeah, all the links down below in the YouTube description. I'm not sure if they're actually added onto the Twitch page. I assume they are. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say Jesse has done his bit over on Twitch when we initially set that one up. But all the links down below in YouTube. You can, of course, watch back any of our races at any time. If you, I know a few of the drivers here do enjoy watching back their progress and seeing how others, rose and fell, should we say, throughout the race. There's always something that you never quite realize happened until you watch back the broadcast. And big shout out to Callum Kerrigan as well in the YouTube chat, popping up as I start my point there. Big up the socials indeed, and big up Callum Kerrigan putting in a mammoth effort with a few of the other guys, Matthew Malcolm as well, providing some fantastic images for all of our social media posts and promotions across the RCI board. So there's a lot of people behind the scenes here that we don't realize that make RCI what it is. And of course, a big shout out to Ted Edwards for tonight's broadcasting, bringing you all the pictures to myself and Adam so we could ramble over the top of them. But Van Driesche will begin his final lap here at Imola. Slight lock-up as he goes through the Villeneuve chicane. It's not over until it's over. Van der Vecken 16 seconds back. It's been a bit of a clash into the first turn. If you rewind the stream and watch back, you'll see how the Flanders esports guys nearly undid their own dominance from this race. But Van Driesche in the BMW P1, Aston Martin Valkyrie for Van der Vecken in P2, and Billy Octane in the Toyota. Should, in theory, commentators curse, please do not strike now. Billy Octane should finish on the bottom step of the podium as Van Driesche heading up towards the final time through the Variante Alta. Over the curbing, a little bit of traffic ahead. It's a Lexus. Is it going to be the race leader? I think it is, actually. It is Martin Lawrence. That's Christopher Strapen just going through the Variante Alta. So we're going to have a bit of a photo finish here. Of course, Van Driesche will signify the end of the race when he crosses and takes the checkered flag. And instantaneously, Martin Lawrence will take the victory behind. You can see how elated the BMW driver is. It is Zino van der Rijse to take the top step of the podium here at Imola, weaving down the straight, and in the background there, Martin Lawrence comes across the line to take the LMGT3 victory in very dominant fashion from both drivers. Christoph Verstappen there, a little bit slow, allows Van der Vecken through, and it's almost a 1-2, kind of 1-2 finish as we see from both guys there, and a dominant performance from the Van der Vecken, the Flanders Esports Van der Vecken and Van Drijsje. And commentators curse, strike no more. Billy Octane should finish in P3. He navigates around the Porsche of Hearn, and across the line goes Billy Octane for the bottom step of the podium. Joe Dorber a little bit down the way. That just proves how kind of dominant the Lexi or Lexuses, however you want to call them, were today. And Joe Dorber takes the bottom step of the podium here. Jack Mays and Tucky have crossed the line. Kevin Boss, the most economical driving Dutchman in the first half of this race, he'll come across the line with fellow Dutch compatriot, of course, Emo Plata in the Ferrari in the background there. Plata will take P5, Kevin Boss will take P4, and Fabian Schmidberger, the last LMGT3 to finish, as Marek Mars comes across the line in the Rothman-esque themed Porsche, or the Redwood Porsche, should we say, as the door signifies there. Fabian Schmidberger across the line, and the last man circulating, George Barr, just in the background there, straight across the line and jumping right back into the pit lane. Adam, it's a very small grid that's finished. It was a very exciting start to the race. The gaps opened up, and then we had this kind of lull of people just chipping away at each other. Some battles formed. Dion Schmitz ran out of energy, but everybody still made it to the line for some healthy championship points on the table.
We did. We saw a really good race. I think a lot of drivers came out of that as winners, gathering some really, really good points. But there is Zeno van der Rijse. He'll go to second in the Drivers' Championship ahead of Milan van der Vecker. Billy Octane picks up a podium for his efforts. Kevin Boss, after a brilliant, brilliant run there, comes home in fourth with Marc Marez, and then George Barr with Jack Hayes, and who only finished a lowly seventh, one lap down, with Jakob Tucky and Dion Schmitz, Raphael Hull rounding out the top 10. Unfortunately, a DNF for the German driver. Wasn't able to go that far, unfortunately for him. Richard Whittle, also another DNF. Did he just passes as well, with Callum Kerrigan DNFing very early on. And Jordan Navarro didn't get going in the Alpine. Faster lap was from Zeno van der Rijse with 1:31.148. Martin Lorenk, another superb effort from him in the Lexus. What a super effort from himself, alongside Christoph Verstappen, a brilliant end for the Lexuses, with Joe Dorber and Wojciech Rybecki. Emo Plata managed to stay here for Emo Plata managed to come fifth with Zeno with Fabian Schmidberger, Daniel Hearn with Matt Malcolm, the most recent of the DNF with Alexei Yablonski, and then Paul Schmidt never got going in the Ford. Neither did Michael Savage, Yari Visser, Harry Harmon, and the fastest lap, of course, going to Christoph Verstappen, 1:43.321. Looks like, I wonder if we are looking to go for an interview, and in fact we do have Jack. So John, as you know Jack so well, why don't you take this one over?
Yeah, me and Jack, we've spoken. We've done a few broadcasts together, mainly on Mondays. I think I was known as Mr. Mondays at one point, so we kind of remain that title, I guess. Jack, fresh out the car, Peugeot looked a bit of a handful at times across the race. I mean, you had a great start, maybe a not so great middle, but still managed to claw into it for the end. It looked very chaotic out there. That's all I'll say from this point. How did it go from the seat of the car?
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, I know you guys saw, I definitely made a bit of a hash of it in the middle. Thank you, Ted, for going and finding my early spin and replaying that 15 minutes after it happened. I appreciate you. But I mean, other than that, it was fun to be out there. It was good to be on the other side. The three-way fight with with Tucky and Huel was super fun. I'm kind of gutted that that Huel lost it in DNFs because I was so thoroughly enjoying that fight.
Yeah, it did look really good up to the point, of course, Huel went backwards out of the first chicane. Everybody ended up kind of splitting around him. Looked very hairy. We saw we saw Kevin Boss even, not Ted Edwards. Kevin Boss was very economical in the Peugeot, managed to, be leaps and bounds ahead on energy. How did you find energy conservation here? Is it quite easy? Was it, a tricky one with all the traffic and trying to hurry past them at times?
I'd say it's pretty easy. I don't know if it was a Peugeot thing that they were just economical, or both Kevin and I know we were both saving a fair bit. We were chatting in the in Discord, and he was going for a massive save. I was sort of going for a medium save. We'll be doing the 10 hours of guitar tomorrow, so I was sort of like, I'm gonna put myself in the mind of how I wanted to drive. Then, so I sort of went for a mid save. It was easy to save the car. Not too many GT3s out there, so not many opportunities to save behind them, but also not too many opportunities to be caught out by them being there.
Yeah, it's a very tricky one. We did touch on the broadcast earlier. Traffic management was going to be key today. Tire allocation, of course, there was 8 sets of tires to use across the qualifying and race. Let's say, was it a fresh set for the start or was it a fresh set for the end?
Fresh set for the start, no tire change. The outlaps are brutal. I mean, I think George Barr is the only car that I'm aware of that was around me that took tires, and that put him back. I mean, I came out alongside him in pit lane. Obviously, he once he got those up to temp, sent it after I missed Ravazza one, but I believe that was on the broadcast as well. So joy for me. But no, I think everybody sort of across the season is, unless they're really quick, are avoiding changing those tires. The new model with the, it's like a 5-6 lap warm up. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, much akin to what we see in the real world series of WEC with the long tire warm ups. Jack, we're going to let you jump off. Just before we let you go, anybody you'd like to say thanks to or shout out?
Oh man, this broadcast team, a special group of people. It was fun to thank you, especially Mr. Dalton, for stepping in and taking my spot. I sort of was like, I'm gonna go race. I wanted to settle a score with Kevin Boss, failed to do that, but thank you to you guys, of course. Thank you for all the drivers for letting me interlope for a week, and but yeah, it was a good one.
Indeed, we'll let you jump off, and we'll get the next driver into the box. The next driver joining us, Jakub Tucky. A bit of a chaotic race. We were just saying to Jack, it looked, the front kind of top 5 or 6 kind of broke away, and it left this awkward mid pack at the back. Jack said it was quite chaotic from his point of view. How did you find today?
I found pretty good race. Few times got too wide into the gravel, but generally my pace wasn't that bad as it was on Spa. And I didn't DNF overtaking any GT3 this time.
Yeah, we saw lots of DNFs in the hypercar category, mainly from drivers kind of getting it wrong along the way. We saw briefly at the end you had a bit of a battle with Dion Schmitz that we thought was kind of unexpected. Did you know that Dion was that low on energy? Is that why you kind of made it easier, or did you just assume the pace difference was too large and you thought you just conserve the race to the end?
Honestly, I thought that his pace is way better than mine, but I saw that he have like 1.4, 1.4, oh my god, 1/4 of my energy, and when I counted how many laps I have and I saw how many fuel he have, I knew his car is under fuel. So I was just hoping he will lose enough time on the pit stop that I will just gain the position and go on the P8, not the P9.
Yeah, so very well calculated, I would say there. So yeah, good heads up driving from yourself. We asked Jack the question about traffic. It's something we touched on earlier on in the broadcast. How did you find it out there? Was it relatively?
Like, honestly, it depended on which part of the track it was. Sometimes it was easy and sometimes it was just better to stay behind him for 3 turns than overtake. I learned my lesson from Spa.
Yeah, for sure. It's always good to learn Poff as well. Anybody you'd like to say thanks to before we let you go?
Uh, no, I think everything I think about this race is that I know why I had so much luck this time. But I'm
So
not gonna say why.
that's fair enough.
I
We'll
think
let you
if
keep your secrets.
I might say it after the season ends. If I
You might
keep doing the same thing before the race.
So we might get a bit of a news story from yourself towards the end of the season. Great to hear, of course, Fuji next week. Best of luck to yourself, and hopefully season flips on its head a bit.
Yeah, see you next race, and I'm going to practice whatever track it will be.
It's Fuji, if you want to know.
Oh my god, I hate this track. Well, time to practice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah,
Take care.
yeah, see you. Good luck.
And from one to another, it's Kevin Boss this time joining us, a bit of a familiar face here at RCI and on the broadcast. Kevin, I've dubbed you the most economical driving Dutchman in the whole of Holland. So you've taken that title away from today. How was it out there?
Yeah, it went pretty well. Yeah, I've been doing that, yeah, fuel saving ever since like halfway through Monza. And ever since it's been working out pretty well for me. So yeah, two P4s in a row, I'll take it.
Yeah, certainly your energy usage was roughly, I think, nearly double what some people had left in the tank when you got down towards the 20%. Some other people on, 8s and 9s with very little lappage to go. We touched earlier, of course, on the traffic. From your point of view, how did it fare?
It was okay for me. I think I might have done one or two moves where it's like, oh, I maybe should have given a bit more room, but yeah, no touching. So yeah, all went good. Uh, I behaved mostly. GT3's behaved. So yeah, can't complain.
Say all good. And we saw a few fights from yourself there, and quite surprising, a good gain on the start, of course, with the Flanders Esports guys kind of coming together, slowing up the whole pack. Bit of a scary moment there.
Not really. Uh, it was actually more when Van der Veken spun at Rivazza. It really looked like he was gonna come on immediately. So at the start, I saw what was happening, but after Van der Veken spin late, I was like, "Oh, please don't come on track now."
It's always that moment, isn't it? With heart in the mouth. Do you go left? Do you go right? It's a bit of a hard one to call sometimes, but good foresight, good fuel saving, and yeah, congratulations on the P4. Fuji next week. Fingers crossed you're liking it more than Jacob Tucky was earlier. Before we let you go, anybody you'd like to say thanks to?
Well, I won't be there for Fuji because work has me away, sadly. Um, but yeah, always the guys in Falcon Racing because whenever you're racing, you're talking to people. That's always more fun than just sitting by yourself. Have a bit of banter, have a bit of fun, and that's always nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of crucial bit to racing, keeping it fun, but still keeping it a little bit serious. So it's always good fun to race with others. And if you do want to race with others, we do have a brand new series starting in Assetto Corsa Competizione on Monday, headed up by the very own Kevin Boss. We just had on the Cup Car Cup, as the name suggests. We take single make style GT machinery, including the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup, the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, and the Ferrari 488 Challenge, and we throw them all together on a circuit and let everybody almost take lumps out of each other, but maybe not too much because stewards may be watching. The format, of course, mixing things up across the season. The opening 2 rounds feature a double 30-minute sprint race with no pit stops required. And then later on in the season, we head to the traditional 1-hour format, introducing the mandatory pit stop, a 30-minute pit window, and fixed refueling. So if you don't want to get involved in that, head on over to SimGrid. And if you do want to get involved, of course, in LMU, that's also over on SimGrid. You can find us thesimgrid.com/communities/race RCI. Down below, you'll, of course, find all of our links for social media. That's Discord, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And the content team are doing a fantastic job in clipping things up. So keep your eyes peeled over there. You may find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation that we've caught on the broadcast. And of course, they've been revolving around bottom left, top right hand side of the screen. All race, Ready Set Sim, Coach Dave Delta, Green Man Gaming, Moser Racing, Pimax, and of course the Motorsport UK Esports Approved Community sticker. You can find all of their links down below, and some of them even include affiliate links such as Green Man Gaming, where they have a spring sale on at the moment. So if you are looking to pick up any new games, use our affiliate link and sprinkle some pennies into the RCI pot for us. Adam, it's been a wonderful round. It's been great to step in for Jack, who found himself in the seat of a Peugeot, being casted by yourselves and I. It's been a great race, a bit of a messy start. It all panned out. We had a bit of a comeback. We had a 0-0, and the championship, I think, has been blown open once again.
And it definitely has. I'm really intrigued to see what those kind of new standings will look like once we get kind of the updates and the refresh. You can have a look at that on thesimgrid.com. And then you'll be able to try and find us on LMU at Club Racing, Racing Club International. You'll go to the Multi-Sprint Series Season 5, and you can have a look at all of the information, the rules, the scoring, the races, the results, the standings, and the drivers that are all involved in this championship. But from myself, from everyone here at RCI, from John Dalton, and a massive thank you to Ted Edwards for providing all the pictures from us. Everyone here at RCI, it's good night. And we'll see you in a week's time in Fuji.
3, 2, 1, go. Get behind the wheel, let's go. Grip the road, feel the flow. Thunder roaring, steel alive. Live this dream and drive. Tires burning with gasoline. Push the limits, chasing green. One shot, don't slow. Go on, we'll take control. Engines scream alive tonight.